If you have Lilith in Leo, this will likely show up as a desire for your desire for praise. It could also show up in your competitive nature, something like this. I'll read this to you. Lilith in Leo has felt ashamed or otherwise wrong for calling special attention to themselves, for seeking the spotlight, or for seeking to be better than others in competitions. They may feel uncomfortable with people expressing these leonine traits. This shame or discomfort can lead to extremes of behavior in these areas, which can exacerbate the problem. They need to find ways to accept the very natural need for applause. Self-acceptance is the key to moderation and empowerment. This can also apply to Lilith in the fifth house. Lilith in the fifth house. So what does the fifth house represent? The fifth house represents things like playing, having fun, wanting to be acknowledged, competitiveness. Okay, I'll read this to you. It'll give you some depth into how Lilith acts in the fifth house. Here we go. Lilith in the fifth house symbolizes narcissism. Her pride is her worst enemy. Lilith in the fifth house gives an unreasonably strong ego in a person. Lilith brings attention seeking. Sex is a performance and natural. The karmic duty is to learn to tame the ego. On a brighter note, Lilith in the fifth house, sparkling charisma is a magnificent thing. There is incredible love to the strong and powerful people. There is a passion for posing, provocative dressing, sex in public places, nude photos, etc. Also, there is a love for rituals and making an event even of the most ordinary things. Apart from that, Lilith brings fearlessness and courage in satisfying the spirit. It can lead to practicing spiritism. This can also apply to Lilith in the sign of Leo. If you have Lilith in Virgo, this will likely show up in how nitpicky you are about things, how ordinary you are, how practical you are about everything. I'll read this to you. Lilith in Virgo has felt ashamed, off, or wrong about paying special attention to the practical side of life, attention to details, organization, and routines. They may go to pains to prove they're not ordinary, worried, eager to please, or concerned about details enough to perfect a craft or project. Leaving many projects unfinished can be a sign of perfectionist expectations. This way, they don't have to deal with the prospect of not producing something perfect. Extremes of behavior and bringing/purging in these areas can be a sign of imbalance. Working on self-acceptance is the key to empowerment. This can also apply to Lilith in the sixth house. Lilith in the sixth house. What does the sixth house represent? Sixth house symbolizes things like work, duty, routines, being perfect, doing things right. I'll read this to you. It'll give you some greater depth into how Lilith acts in the sixth house. Lilith in the sixth house affects daily activities, so people with Lilith will be one-sided and likely to fall to the extreme. Lilith in the sixth house guarantees shining intelligence and a brilliant mind that can lead a person to various high positions and a successful career. There's also rebellion against order and provocative humor. Lilith can also bring a lucid expression of sexuality or a repression of the instinct. Lilith is an obsessive perfectionist who is hypercritical about her hygiene. Also, Lilith in sixth house sometimes suffers from sexual shame and repression. Karmic duty is to overcome the feeling of guilt and inferiority. Contrary to her darkness, Lilith is a natural at getting inside her lover's mind. Mysterious and sensual, she's at her best when behind closed doors. Also, there is a need for suppressing instincts and appearing cold and perverted. This can also apply to Lilith in the sign of Virgo. If you have Lilith in Libra, then this will likely show up in how you deal with one-on-one relationships. Uh, your focus on right and wrong in these one-on-one relationships. Your approvals, the way you seek approval for things from other people. I'll read this to you. Lilith in Libra has felt ashamed or wrong for needing companionship or seeking approval from others, or they may otherwise feel that dependency and compromise are weak and not right, and can feel uncomfortable with people who seem to need these things. In the absence of self acceptance regarding these very real needs, extremes of behavior in these areas can be the result. And this perpetuates the cycle and the problem. Working on self acceptance is the key to empowerment. This can also apply to Lilith in the seventh house. Lilith in the seventh house. What is the seventh house all about? Seventh house represents things like balance, harmony in relationships, being fair, equality. I'll read this to you to give you some more depth into how Lilith acts in the seventh house. Here we go. Aspirations that cannot be fulfilled. Desire for mental balance can lead to fanaticism. Lilith brings fanatical and false spiritual leaders. Lilith in the seventh house can be incredibly seductive. In other words, it brings charm. Lilith in the seventh house could suffer injustice despite her constant fight for equality. Karmic duty is to learn to accept people for who they are. At her best, Lilith in the seventh house is a natural leader and a charming diplomat. Lilith in the seventh house gives people that are very receptive to outside influences. Also, Lilith brings fighter for social justice and equality. This can also apply to Lilith in the sign of Libra as well. If you have Lilith in Scorpio, this will likely show up in your desire to go really deep in things. You know, it could be education, research, but also it could show up in the way you share things with other people or with a special someone. I'll read this to you. Lilith in Scorpio has felt ashamed for the natural need for intimacy, attachment, and depth contact. They may feel wrong if they are expressing jealousy or possessiveness, attachment, etc., and can feel uncomfortable around those who are especially passionate and attached. Lack of self-confidence in these areas can lead to extremes of behaviors that exacerbate the problem. Empowering themselves invokes working on accepting these qualities. This can also apply to Lilith in the 8th house. So Lilith in the 8th house. What does the 8th house represent? The 8th house represents things like our deep feelings and emotions, or our desire to go deep intellectually. It also represents the things that we share. You know, we share lots of things, whether that sharing is one-on-one or whether that sharing is collectively. Here, this gives you some greater depth and insight about how Lilith acts in the 8th house. I'll read this to you. Lilith is at her most potent form in the sign of the Scorpion. She's incredibly seductive here. Above all, Lilith is hunting down lovers like prey. This placement brings a lot of sexual energy. There is also obsessiveness and jealousy with their loved ones. Karmic duty is to learn the value of trust. There is a danger of exhibitionism and voyeurism. Those who have very complicated and inharmonious birth charts are the most sadistic beings. Dedication or hell, there is no other choice. Dangers from the depths. These people must be immersed in dark depths. Above all, Lilith in the 8th house is associated with power and violence, and it often suggests tendency to masochism and self-injury. This can also apply Lilith to the sign of Scorpio. If you have Lilith in Sagittarius, This will likely show up in how you seek meaning in life, your belief systems, the way you go about trying to understand life. I'll read this to you. Lilith in Sagittarius has felt ashamed for their curiosity, questions, restlessness, the need to challenge the questions, life, facts, and beliefs, or the need to get away, expand, and seek meaning. They may feel uncomfortable around people who are expressing these Sagittarian traits, not quite trusting them. However, when feeling stressed, they can go to extremes in these areas. Working on self acceptance is the key to empowerment. This can also apply to Lilith in the ninth house. So, Lilith in the ninth house. What is the ninth house all about? Ninth house is about understanding the bigger picture of life and sharing what you know with everyone. This gives some depth, some insight into how Lilith acts in the ninth house. I'll read it to you. Lilith wants everything in excess. She is easily aroused, especially when she's traveling. Temptations are great here, especially on trips abroad. There is a need to go where no one's gone before. Lilith in ninth house gives the person a specific fiery energy. With that energy, she moves to action. Lilith often adds a note of the mystical, exotic, and the unique to the most ordinary experiences. Karmic duty is to have faith. Contrary to her darkness, Lilith in the ninth house can be deeply inspiring to those around her. Truly all would be well here if it were not for morals, conscience, and the question of good and bad that stands as a barricade to every pleasure. Sensuality is frequently complicated. This can also apply to Lilith in the sign of Sagittarius. If you have Lilith in Capricorn, this will likely show up in your desire for success in life, your discipline, your drive, your dedication, your desire to have status in society. I'll read this to you. Lilith in Capricorn has felt ashamed or otherwise wrong for the desire to excel, succeed, or reach for worldly goals and ambitions. And they may feel uncomfortable around people who seem materialistic, status conscious, or particularly business minded and practical or ambitious. It can be hard to connect with their own ambitions and need for others' esteem, but going there and allowing yourself to feel these needs can be life-changing. On the other hand, if they feel uncomfortable with these things, they can go to extremes in these areas and then feel badly afterwards. The path to empowerment is self-acceptance and moderation. This can also apply to Lilith in the 10th house. So Lilith in the 10th house. What does the 10th house represent? The 10th house represents the need, the desire, the discipline to really do well in the physical world and really make your mark on the physical world. I'll read this to you to give you some greater depth into understanding how Lilith acts in the 10th house. Here we go. Lilith brings out feelings of shame for the desire to excel, succeed, or reach for worldly goals. Also, Lilith brings feeling uncomfortable around people who seem materialistic, status conscious, or ambitious. It can be hard for people with this placement to connect with their own ambitions. The path to empowerment is self-acceptance and moderation. In the 10th house, Lilith is completely ruthless. If her hopes and desires are not met, then she can be ice cold. This placement is notorious for mixing business with pleasure. So, career is often connected to sex. Karmic duty is drawing a line between emotions and, at her best, Lilith in the 10th house has an extraordinary endurance. This can also apply to Lilith in the sign of Capricorn. And I'm sorry about some of these sentences cut short here. If you have Lilith in Aquarius, then this will likely show up in your desire to be a part of a group, or you being group minded. And I'll read this to you. Lilith in Aquarius has felt ashamed or off for wanting to be a part of a group, team, or community, for being one of the crowd, and can feel quite wary of people who seem to need these things. The answer is not to reject these basic needs, since this can result in binging and purging on a social level, going all out, feeling bad about it, hiding away, and then repeating the cycle again. Self acceptance can help empower them to put an end to extremes of behaviors in these areas. This can also apply to Lilith in the 11th house. So, Lilith in the 11th house. What is the 11th house all about? In general, the 11th house is all about friends and freedom. And here, this will give you some greater depth into how Lilith acts in the 11th house. I'll read this to you. Freedom at all costs, even at the price of ridicule and emptiness. This placement emphasizes the principles of the Aquarius, freedom and autonomy. So, this easily causes problems in life because people avoid strong and lasting connections. In the 11th house, Lilith is a sexual rebel. She is incredibly particular with her partner, who must be unique and different from the rest. Lilith in Aquarius is outspoken and obsessed with her freedom. Above all, it's her word against the world. Karmic duty is to learn empathy, contrary to her darkness. Lilith in the 11th house can start a revolution all by herself. She is adored by many. This can also apply to Lilith in the sign of Aquarius. If you have Lilith in Pisces, this will likely show up in your spirituality or your desire for connectedness with people or everyone to be connected. I'll read this to you. Lilith in Pisces has felt ashamed or off for being needy, compassionate, or wishy-washy, or for their spiritual side, and this person can feel uncomfortable or annoyed with people who resist labels, who are not very assertive or ready to take the lead. Rejecting or feeling ashamed of their basic needs in these areas can lead to extremes of behavior and repeated cycles of binging and purging with these traits. The key to moderation and empowerment is self-acceptance. This can also apply to Lilith in the 12th house. Lilith in the 12th house. What is the 12th house all about? The 12th house is, in general, all about escapism. It's about unification of everyone, spirituality, things like this. Here's how Lilith acts in the 12th house. I'll read this to you. Fascination with self-sacrifice and blending into others, prophetic visions of death. This placement gives people the ability to feel connected with everything, even with the deepest thoughts and the cosmic soul. Lilith prefers fantasy over reality. In the bedroom, she's typically submissive. Lilith in 12th house uses sex as a form of escapism. Her emotions can be deeply repressed, and she is often in denial. She's consumed by her fantasies, and it's important that she draw a line between fantasy and reality as part of her karmic duty. At her best, Lilith in the 12th house is incredibly psychic and in tune with her surroundings. This can also apply to Lilith in the sign of Pisces. Okay, so now I'm going to talk about how Black Moon Lilith applies to me. And I'll just focus on the things that I think you can easily see if you've been looking through my channel or if you've seen any of my videos and see what I talk about and the way I think. For me, Black Moon Lilith is in the sign of Scorpio. And Scorpio is about going really, really, really deep, whether that's emotionally deep, intellectually deep, research. It's about sharing. It's about the things that we keep secret and hidden. Um, those types of things. Scorpio type things. And I won't go too deep into my personality and personal life and stuff, but you can see through the channel, I like to go deep with things. I like to really dig and try to find out what things are all about. So for me, I do have a tendency to just really binge on these types of things, and just really keep going until I just burn myself out, and sometimes at the expense of other life things. That's how my mind works sometimes. It's kind of when I go down that hall, it's hard to turn back sometimes. So for me, Black Moon Lilith is in the sign of Scorpio, and that's the part that you could see through the channel easily, I think. And Black Moon Lilith for me is in my ninth house, and the ninth house is about um, really living and exploring so that you can understand the bigger picture of life. You really want to know what life's all about. It's about philosophy. It's about understanding the world. It's about travel. It's about religion. And again, you can that's the part of my life that it dominates, because it's in my ninth house. So that's how Black Moon Lilith applies to me. That's the part of my life that it affects the most. So I really go. You see through my channel, I love to talk about, you know, trying to figure out life and trying to understand this and know the blueprint and know how everything works, and just really navigate it and master it, so that you know we're here on this planet. We live in this life, and um, a lot of us we have no idea like why we're here and what we're doing here and what's the purpose and what's the meaning of it all. And I think it's one of many lives or opportunities that we will have and that we will be in. And even though I feel this life is one life of many, I feel that it's a part of a series, and it's a part of I have to master this one in order to be better off in the next one. So I take it all pretty seriously. So that's my story. That's my information in regards to how Black Moon Lilith specifically applies to me. I'll end the video by sharing with you some really old information, a story, mythology, biblical information, an allegory. You know, um, this is not meant to be interpreted literally, just like a lot of sacred texts. It's really to pass the idea along into the future, I think. But here we go. I'll read this to you. It's pretty interesting, and I think it'll bring everything into perspective more. Here we go. The Black Moon Lilith in mythology. In early Sumerian mythology, Lilith was described a handmaid to the goddess Inanna, queen of heaven, in which she would gather men in from the fields for sacred rites. There are also several other versions in both Sumerian and Hebrew mythology. In Hebrew mythology, Lilith, Lilith was intended to be Adam's first wife. But when he wanted to take a dominant role over her in sex, she refused to submit to the role of a submissive wife. She distanced herself from Adam's authority and left the Garden of Eden on her own accord. God sent 3 angels after her. She refused to return and was forever demonized as a fallen woman who gave birth to demons and stole babies from their bed. So that kind of puts Lilith in perspective. And this piece of story that I just gave you, this lies in all of us, but it is oriented in different ways in each and every one of us. I hope you all enjoyed my video, and thank you. I really appreciate you for watching and taking your time out and sharing how you think and feel. Please like, share, subscribe, comment, and browse my channel. Some really cool things are gonna come down the pipe in the future. I'm gonna keep going deeper and deeper, and I'm gonna keep pushing the edge on my content, and some really interesting things to come. And again, I thank you so much. I love you all, and you have a beautiful day. And I hope you're really enjoying this beautiful change of the season. I'm having a really incredible time just walking down this path, and it's really beautiful. So again, thank you. I love you all. Bye.